So we're going to have a little, John's going to tell us a little story, then we'll have a little question and answer. And after that, we're going to have Tom McDermott come up and play a couple of songs. You want to stand, sit? Look, there's a bench right here. He's got to adjust.
Test 1, 2, check. Check 1, 2. Can you hear that?
Yep.
So I think John manages bar for a few years, right, John?
Well, I was one of the owners.
Yeah.
We opened it up.
That police are listening, man. Don't tell people you own this place. Don't tell people you own this place, man. The police are listening. This is being recorded, man. John Parsons, y'all give him a hand.
Yeah, so I'd like to welcome all of you all to what would have been James Booker's 83rd birthday tonight, the 17th. And thanks to all the piano masters for giving tribute to James tonight. Now, I thought I'd focus tonight on the two most frequently asked questions about James. And those are two about how he lost his eye and how he died. So I'm going to give you my interpretation of these. And everything was very complicated, but talking about James, as those of you who saw the movie can understand. So as far as the eye goes first, there were many different explanations, many different stories about people that had to do with it. Everything. Frank Sinatra was one. Dirty Syringe was another. Then he had a money scuffle in New York with this guy named Big Mo. That was told to me by Eddie Bo. But the most prevalent one is the story about Ringo Starr. As you saw in the movie, Dr. John and Alan Toussaint believed that Ringo Starr had something to do with putting out his eye. Now, I'm going to digress for a minute. When I first became James' manager around 78, I had some flyers made up, about 200 of them, a stack, with a nice picture of James on them, and I took a paragraph out of the Gambit magazine. It said some nice things about him, what a great piano player he was. But in that paragraph, there was like 5 words that said he had done a stint in Angola, which is true. And that night when he saw them, he took a Marcelot pencil and he went through all 200 of those flyers and he blacked out the segment that said he had been in Angola. So that indicates to me that he did not like to talk. He was very sensitive about his experience in Angola. And so I believe that what happened is he was beaten up in Angola. And then his eye got infected. He told me this, and the doctor who examined him said that if he didn't take the eye out that was infected, then the other eye was going to get infected too, and then he'll be blind. So that's when he lost his eye. And he was in Angola at the time. He served about 6 months. He was busted for 2 nickel bags of heroin. But Harry Connick Jr. and his friend Joe Tex helped him get out of Angola. He only served about 6 months. He was sentenced to 2 years. So, after he the thing that many of the writers miss who write about James Booker is that after his eye was removed, he got a glass eye. So you get a lot of contradictory witnesses that say, oh, he had two eyes. I saw him when he went out to California. He had two eyes, and then when he left, he had he was wearing an eye patch. Well, there was a story after he got out of Angola. He went into NA meetings. You're required to do this, and the guys would take his glass eye and they would kind of tease him. They would pass his eye around, and he would say, "Oh, give me my eye back. I gotta go do this and that." So that's what I believe he already had. Now, this is the album that causes a lot of the controversy. The Ringo Starr album, where if you can see, it was produced. It came out in '73, so it was probably produced. It was probably recorded in around '72. He played on the second song, which is "Have You Seen My Baby," and it was recorded in California. So that was when he was in California, and he did. I believe he did rip off Ringo Starr. He was given a session check for doing the album. He took the check and he cashed it, and he claimed he lost the check. And they gave him another check, and then he did it again twice. So I do believe that he did rip off Ringo Starr. But I believe I don't believe the story that Ringo Starr had anything to do with his eye, because he doesn't make. Ringo Starr was a very multi-millionaire, and this is a serious crime. If you hire some people to beat up somebody, and if they put their eye out, Ringo Starr could go to jail, and I don't believe he would risk doing that over a few $100s. Now, so the last part of the story is how he lost his glass eye. And he told me once the figure that he sold it to a tourist for $1,500. So that's what happened to his glass eye, and that's kind of where we end the story about his eye. Now, the next subject is his death. How he died. I was his manager then, and he was doing pretty well. This album, the Rounder album, came out in 82. This is the Rounder album, James Booker Classified. And he was doing pretty well at the time. He had, these albums came out, he had a stack of them that he used to sell. And he would actually be sitting here, and he would have the albums, and he wouldn't play a song till somebody bought an album. James Booker. But then what happened next is he was also doing well. He had like three jobs that were paying him pretty well. He had the Maple Leaf job here on Tuesdays. He had the Faubourg Marigny job. He would also play the Dream Palace sometimes, and the main thing in the day, he had the Toulouse theater job with Russell Rock and the show One More Time at the Toulouse Theater. So he was doing pretty well during that period in '82 after the album came out. But then what happened in '83? Some places closed down. Within a period of a few weeks, the Faubourg Marigny closed down, and the Russell Rock closed the One More Time theater program at the Toulouse Theater. So it left him with nothing to do in the day, and he still had this job left. It was I tried to get him some other jobs too, but he also had an ulcer, so he wouldn't travel, and his ulcer had gotten worse. So he lost a few other jobs. He would drink and eat spicy fried chicken, and I didn't know it at the time, but he had an ulcer. So the doctor had put him on Antabuse. Now, let me see, excuse me, don't miss anything here. So he started hanging out at these seedy bars on Orleans Avenue between the French Quarter and Claiborne Avenue on Orleans, and the story I got, he was doing some pretty bad cocaine during this period. But okay, so the next story is in November of '83, he was dropped off by a cab driver at Charity Hospital. He had internal organ failure. He was being wheeled to the coronary room, and a person from the 5th floor came down and started a fight. The person who was wheeling him to the coronary room went to break over a fight. Another orderly came along and saw his eye missing and took him to see an eye doctor, where he died waiting to see an eye doctor. He died of a heart attack. Wow. So that's what happened. Now, I had heard at first that he was doing some bad cocaine, but then when Lily Keeber did the documentary, she went to Charity Hospital. She actually got a copy of the autopsy report, and it said on the autopsy report that the only thing he had in him was alcohol and Antabuse, which I just couldn't believe, because I knew him at the time, and I knew he was screwing up pretty badly. But that's what this autopsy said, and I actually met the doctors. They were at the opening ceremony of the movie that you just saw. Then the next thing I found out about was, I was told when he first died that he had had some rat poison in his system, but this did not show up on the autopsy report. So then I found out a few months ago that there was this rat poison called thallium sulfate, and I saw a picture of it. It looks like a stack of cocaine, and it's water soluble. And what I read about it is it doesn't show up on an autopsy report unless you're specifically looking for it. So that's what I believe happened. He probably injected himself with this, and it didn't show up on the autopsy report. Now, after James died, I was very emotionally affected myself. I bought a piano for him, and I never had it tuned again. I couldn't listen to other piano players after he died, and the piano just sort of went to trash. People would throw beer on it and stuff, but except for Marcia Ball and a few of them, Ed Volker, I couldn't listen to. I'll give you an example. I heard Liberace do a version of Malagueña, and I compared it to the way James did it, and it just it sounded so flat.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's my speech for tonight, and thank you all again for coming out.
Hey, we thank you for telling us these stories about Booker. And we know how much you loved him and appreciate him. I think many of us do. I know if you're my age, you saw Booker. I don't know if you young kids here ever got to see Booker, but if you did, it was a pleasure. And it's like, we didn't appreciate him enough when he was here. I know that for a fact. I used to go to a place called the Dream Palace, and he played there, and it's like, I didn't think he was that special. But he was. He absolutely was. So anyway, if you have any questions for John Parsons, well, we're going to take like 5 minutes here, and if there's a question you'd like to ask John, John would be happy to answer some questions. Yes? Yes, sir? All right. So please, if you have a question, raise your hand. Not you. The nun said don't recognize you. I'm sorry. Please, stand up and ask a question, please.
Who's got a question?
Ask a question.
So, I want to ask you about the management side. There was a scene in the movie where, on the one hand, James Booker is refusing to board a boat where he's being hired or offered a gig by the Rolling Stones. I heard that in the movie. And then, on the other hand, as soon as he's getting a check, he's like running out the door and they don't see him for 2 weeks. So how do you balance them?
You're mixing up two stories. The story was
two stories, yeah.
when the Rolling Stones came to New Orleans, they rented out the Riverboat President, and they wanted James Booker to play the party. And James, they sent somebody out here to invite him to play the party, and he told them, "I don't like water," so he didn't play. But what he was really doing, he wanted them to throw him a bone, something, you know, like they could afford $1,000 for him, but they didn't. They wanted him just to play, and so that's probably why he didn't want to do it.
So they weren't offering any.
As far as I know, no, they didn't offer him anything.
All right. Well, that explains a lot. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, but that, all right.
Money walks, bullshit talks. Money talks and bullshit walks.
Well,
Do we have any other questions?
he said he didn't like water.
Yeah, we got a couple here.
But later on, he played, the last concert he did was at the Riverboat President, and there were like 3,000 people there, and he played beautifully.
What about the ball?
That was a different thing, close to when he died, but he played beautifully, and then he disappeared for another 3 weeks, and he was found passed out in the gutter. Yeah.
Next question.
Okay.
Yeah, so what's your favorite Booker song? You got a favorite, or you got a few, or an album?
Well, I have a few. Yeah, some of them are they're different versions of specific songs that are my favorite. I've also written a screenplay about James Booker, and I have assigned different of his songs. Some of them I have from my own recordings, but on each album that he did, I have like a favorite song. One of them is definitely the CIA song. One of them is a certain version, but you got to get the right versions of them. One of them is the version of So Swell When You're Well, and of course, the greatest version of Jocko Partner.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Dave,
Fights on your screenplay.
do what?
Anybody like looking at it?
What about it?
Are you getting anybody to produce it or anything? Is that
Well, I've tried. I haven't sold it yet. I've actually finished writing it. I've got third rewrites. There is a man interested in it, but he wants more James Booker in it, so I'm working on that right now. I haven't given up on it.
Hey, would all y'all please give John Parsons a round of applause. You know, he was a huge part of James Booker's career. A wonderful, wonderful, friendly man. Thank you, John, for all your help and everything you've done. And a huge supporter of the Maple Leaf, I must say. So, next we're going to have another piano professor come up here. Tom McDermott.